in the midst of discussing was you were talking about U.S. administrators not having the autonomy that British administrators did, and people just wanted to clarify that's what you meant, that the U.S. administrators don't have the autonomy.
Well, from my experience of visiting a number of schools, what happens, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this, I'm sure, but you have a principal of a school, but above that principal, you have a superintendent of an area. And the superintendent and the board of education, or whatever you call them, will call the shots. So the principal doesn't have the autonomy over the school that a British head teacher would have. That's what I mean. I can see Chuck is nodding down there. So, so, so you, and what the New York head teachers, principals were saying is that they have to play much more of a political game than we would here. When I introduced values-based education, I didn't have to go to the local authority or whoever it was and ask permission to do that. You know, my own what we have in the UK is as board of governors, but the governors appointed me to the school. They are the school's governors, and they wanted to do what I was suggesting. So that may be a difference. I don't know. Chuck, is that right? What I've said?
That's my experience as well. Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Joan, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for this conversation. So I've thought a lot about this. Why is America the way that you describe? And it seems to me that a value, which is social justice, can also be used against you. Which, and what I mean by that is, for example, the value of social justice would be that you treat everyone the same. However, when it comes to a child's experience in the classroom or the teacher's ability to really be creative in their craft, if everybody is expected to have the same outcome on a test and to be on the same page in the book, then you've got a clash between what we think of as socially just and what is actually values-based just.
Yes.
So I think we face that very strongly in America because of our desire to be socially just.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Joan, what you say. I hear exactly what you're saying. One of the worldwide problems has been that since the early 90s, middle 90s, there's something in the world called the PISA studies. The PISA studies rank countries according to their how adolescents pass basic examinations. And therefore, you had in the States with George Bush, you had the sort of push to go back to basics, which is the basic subjects, because the Americans were not scoring very well. And that happened in Australia too. I mentioned that values work was really flourishing in Australia. And then suddenly there was a change of government and they said, no, we need more literacy and we need more numeracy. You know, we're not doing well enough on the PISA studies. And this has happened in many countries of the world. With the exceptions, and I always say this, of the Scandinavian countries. Now, which countries come top of the PISA studies?
Finland.
Estonia, Finland, all the countries that don't follow the back to basics actually do well at the basics because you need a holistic education to nurture the human soul, all the aspects of us. We need all that. You learn literacy by doing fascinating projects that stimulate the imagination so you want to sort of find out. You'll read a car manual if you're interested in putting the engine together. So it's complete. Then, and the problem is we allowed in so many countries politicians to take charge of education, people that don't really know about education at all. They don't understand child development. There are particular ages and stages which children have that you then give them an appropriate diet, educational diet so that they will flourish at the right stages. But there's been even early years kids have to now do work that really they shouldn't be doing. Again, Scandinavia, they don't do formal education until the age of 7. You know, it's mainly play-based until that. So the children are learning relationships. A values-based school, number one is relationships. I ought to have emphasized that more. You learn best if you're in good relationship with other people. Families have to be in good relationship. Looks about families, we could talk about families, but so all these things, Joan, you're quite right in that dichotomy that you were really throwing up to us. But when I've visited the United States, I've never talked about values because I've been told by all sorts of high ups that we don't talk about values here, Neil. If you talk about values, you're then talking about religion, which I'm not talking about religion. But there's an assumption that you're talking about religion, and it's not in the Constitution to talk about religion. So what do I talk about? Which is, you know, in many parts of the states flourishing, and that's character education.
Yeah.
And values-based education develops character. That's what it's all about, character education. How can we? I was with the president of Iceland 2 weeks ago, and her whole thing about leadership, and she was talking about leadership, not necessarily schools. She said, the leader has to ask this question before anything else. And the question is, what sort of person do I want to be? What sort of person do I want to be? What are the aspects of character that are going to make me good? So I need to be compassionate. I need to be someone who will collaborate with other people, someone who will not out somebody because they disagree with me. We won't polarize opinion with the thems and the us's. All those sort of things are in the new leadership model that the well-being economy in many parts of the world is now leading. The old system is dying. We can see it dying around us, but not too many folk are thinking about, well, how can we create a world governance that actually will allow all humanity to flourish? Why is it, I was saying to Tim earlier, why is it in Norway, when they discovered oil, they didn't make 2 or 3 people rich, they made the whole country rich. So everybody has more than enough. So you create this incredible middle class of people without having a few people with lots of money and a lot of people without any money. So this is about equality, how we create equality in a system, how you really do, and a values-based approach, whether it be in business or whatever. So a values-based approach in business, you know, the leader has to think about the values they are being, because it's about being, it's about what you're modeling. That's what the teachers found. It's what we model is important. So it's about all those things that actually creates the collaboration around you. And it's not the manipulation of people. It's not trying to use people, and therefore people will say what you want them to say rather than talking authentically. Because a values-based environment enables people to be authentically themselves. And I'll pause now and let you speak.
Yeah. So before you go, Anne, I've got a couple things. So Neil, we invited you here today to talk about one of our top values for the year, which is community. And so what you do to me really reminded me of the efforts to build community, and would like to also make sure we get time for people to speak. We've got about 15 minutes yet left so that we can feel a sense of community right here, live it on this call. So just is there 1 or 2 thoughts before we turn to Anne's question that you want to share on community, or do you feel you've already covered it? Just trying to center that word in the rest of our conversation.
I want to bring Tim into this because Tim and I had a really fascinating conversation earlier, and he said something really profound. With all the problems of the world, it was something like this, Tim, you'll correct me what you said, but with everything, all the big issues of the world, we can feel overwhelmed. We can feel overwhelmed, mentally distressed. But the person who's in front of us at this moment, we can affect them. Tim, come in on this. Have I got it right?
Yeah, you've got the theme right. The phrase that I use, and I use when I'm training my teachers, is I say that it looks, yeah, just looks overwhelming. It looks oppressive and in many cases impossible. So I counsel them, your objective is not to save the world. Your objective is to save the moment. Save this moment that you have with a person who's right in front of you right now. And the fundamental motto that we have in the classroom and when I'm doing my trainings is you don't need an education to be of value. You need an education because you are of value. And so that stitches the values and the community concept together and it becomes visceral for people, right? They feel like they're the thing that's in this community that has value. And because of that, they have the natural capacity to cherish themselves and that elevates the whole process. But we can get our energies so dispersed and we become kind of ineffective when we get overwhelmed by the scale that we're looking at. But when we have that moment of authenticity with a person who's right in front of us, that's the thing that we save. That then becomes something where we all get the sense like, oh, this is something I can do. I can do this. And that becomes a catalyst for fantastic change. I just went to graduation for, I'm now retired, but I saw my last group of students walk up on stage and shake hands and get their diplomas. And the scale of their accomplishment, considering the circumstances that they were in, is off the charts. And the sense that because they have value, they can live a value-based life. It just emanated from them as they crossed the stage. So yeah, we're not saving the world, we're saving the moment. And that moment is with the person who's in front of us right now. So
Thank you.
thank
Tim.
you for giving me a little platform there.
It's good.
Those
to
of
see
you who
again, Tim.
don't know Tim's work, it's just outstanding. I've learned so much from Tim over the years too, and his wonderful work with really disadvantaged people, incredible. So thank you, Tim.
You're very welcome.
One of
Yeah.
one of the aspects of my own research now has taken what I said earlier on, and that is to do with ethical intelligence. I spoke at the United Nations in Geneva 2 years ago about ethical leadership in the world and the need for ethical leadership. And I said, ethical leadership is about ethical intelligence, and values-based organizations, whether they be schools or businesses or families, develop one thing, and that is ethical intelligence. Ethical intelligence is the ability to ethically self-regulate your own behavior. And that is the outcome of the work that I've been talking about today. Can you imagine a world where our leadership at all levels in society is that it's self-regulated? In schools, we're always talking about helping children to be self-regulated, but through this sort of approach, you develop this because you're giving children initially the ability to think about who they are as people, and you then develop a community. The community of the school, I must say this, some of the parents initially thought we were, to use a British expression, barking mad. They thought we were really, out of our trees, as it were, doing this. What on earth are they doing? All these silly words. One of the ladies I always remember, she used to give me funny looks initially, but one day she came and said, Dr. Hawkes, can I come and see you? And I said, yes. She said, well, I've got to tell you, I was one of your critics at start. But she said, my daughter Emily came home one evening and I was busy and I was flustered. And Emily said to me, she said, Mum, she said, you're not showing much patience. And she said, then I realized that Emily had really understood about values. And I thought, well, I must start understanding now. And she was one of the families that started doing something that I suggest families do, and that's have a discussion at home about your values and then put your main values on your fridge, your ice box or whatever. Put your values there. And so that it reminds the family about what's really important in your lives. So the community, it has an enormous effect on community. And if we just ratchet this up, I think it could affect a nation.
I hope so. So, Anne, I know you're ready to go, and we just touched on some things that I know you're passionate about. So,
Well, I'll do this really quick because the truth is I'd open up a conversation. We all could be together for another hour or so. But one of the things I wanted to ask you though, and just really listening to you, Neil, is the essence of values. What's the actual underneath of the value? So a lot of my commitment to transforming education is to realize from even in the womb, but even like these little babies and whatever, that we're really looking and realizing they matter. There's a unique contribution, a unique human being over there. So that's part of what I'm really looking at. How do you educate for human beingness? Because a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old, all the way through, actually then get that, and it's embodied and it's in their emotions. So I know we're just putting a little seed planted here, but I'd love to have more conversations, to really take that to see what we did all the way from the beginning. So we got the human beings that are there really early on. Anyway, thank you very much for listening.
Oh, and I'm so on your page. You're absolutely. I just briefly mentioned another great friend of mine who I've learned a lot from, and that's Professor Mark Williams in Australia. He's professor of neuroscience there. And if you want to read a great book, his book that he wrote last year is called The Connected Species.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, a great book to read. And what he's saying there is we naturally, as human beings, are connected. We have a thirst for connection. The
Yes.
values that I talk about are actually basic human qualities that we have within us. We would not have survived 40,000 years or whatever it is had we not been able to cooperate with one another.
Yeah.
It's not competition. We didn't survive through competition.
Right.
We survived through cooperation.
Yes.
And all you talk about, Anne, about those qualities of the little ones in the womb, you're absolutely right. And I've learned most in education from early years practitioners. So
Yes. Yeah.
I
Thank you.
really,
Thank
really
you.
get that. So
so,
yeah, I just totally agree with you.
Yeah.
so unfortunately, we lost 5 or 10 minutes due to the government trying to shut down us bringing values to the U.S. But time for one more thought or question. Then I'd just love to give Neil a chance to give some closing thoughts. So, anyone else? Doesn't have to be a question; could just be a contribution. So.
I have a question. Neil, how do you manage the government relation with implementing like values-driven education in a country? And I'm curious about that because I would like to do that in my country, the Dominican Republic. So I want to know the first steps that I should take to do that in a country that doesn't have that.
That's very interesting. I've worked in so many countries around the world. Some have your issues, and that's really difficult. Yeah, you can get a surprise result. The main thing, I'm thinking of one country which I won't mention. The main thing is that you have a group of people in that country that really start making it work, going back to Tim, at an individual level, so that they in their classrooms are being the change they want to see. So I started, a book was written about my work called A Quiet Revolution. It was quiet because I didn't engage the government in what we were doing. It was a bottom-up movement. And before I knew it, there were hundreds of schools that were doing it. So
Wow.
perhaps the change has to happen at that grassroots, individual level, not going to a corrupt government who will see this as a threat to their power base. Because
Exactly.
they don't want this. They want to keep you in your place. So you have to be just get in there and start working it. And then it's interesting, though, a very powerful country, which I won't name because I'm being recorded, I was amazed when the Minister of Education of this Middle Eastern country got in touch with me because they wanted to make changes. And it's a country that I would never have thought would have wanted the change. But it is happening. There's something happening in the world that's countering the current dominant movement. And it's you folk I'm looking at today. You are the heroes. You are the people that can make the change. But my plea to you, if this is final thoughts, please will you turn up your own volume? Let others know. Don't just sit back and let the opposition win. And I don't mean that in political terms either. But the opposition often is within us. We've got to come alongside those parts of us that are nervous and shy. I'm quite a shy person, really, but I have to really push myself to speak out
Yeah.
because I think of the little children. I don't want to upset you by this remark because I've already made it once today, but in Iceland, an American young guy got up, and we had lots of Palestinians in the room. And he said, I want to apologize that our bombs are killing your children. That's at the level of values. How are we valuing life on this planet? One of the learnings I have in all my years now is that we're all the same. I don't meet anybody that's not the same as you folk. Why do we have to think that somebody is an enemy? Why do we have dualism in the world? If we treat people badly, yeah, they become our enemy. You'll create enemies. You bomb people and their freedom fighters soon become the terrorists. That's how we change the language. So we've got to use another approach. As the president of Iceland said, we've got to work with the hearts of people. Most people in the world are really great people. They're really great people. They don't want the killing and all the rest of it to go on. But we need, as human beings, to really let our real selves show so that we can just have systems in the world which will enable this planet to flourish. I'll finish with another story I told about Iceland. When I was in Iceland, they showed me an ice field. It's a really big ice field. But I was told this ice field is melting fast because of climate change. And once it melts, the volcano is going to blow its top because the ice field is keeping the pressure down. Immediately this ice field goes, then we're going to have all this stuff come into the atmosphere, which is going to be horrendous worldwide. When one blew in Iceland 10 years ago, it grounded every plane in Europe. The next time they say it's going to ground your country, everybody, and much more. So these big issues are not being solved by current politicians. I talked to someone at the United Nations in Iceland who runs the food program for the UN. And I said, why isn't the UN solving this? And he said, well, it's not the UN, it's national. National countries don't actually want to solve the problems of the world. They have self-interest and are only interested in getting the vote the next time. So we've got to actually shift the systems. We've got to really come out and speak. I hope that's not anything I've said not too upsetting or anything. But
Not to me. No, it's wonderful. And part of the reason I wanted you as our first speaker was the way that you speak, your eloquence and the heart, and just, you radiate kindness, and that's important. So I'm really grateful that you were willing to do this with us, and nobody could stop us. They tried to stop us today, and we didn't let them. So
I do believe that was so. I do believe I've never had that happen. My screen, I haven't mentioned that word again.
So, want to ask everyone to join me in thanking Neil, whether it's clapping your hands, doing a dance, whatever it is that makes you feel.
Thank you, Neil.
But thank you so much, Neil. I appreciate it.
Do keep in touch with me, all of you. You know, if you look me up on Google, you'll find results. And if you want to read one of my book, it's from my heart, transforming lives through values. That's a little book I wrote about values. And if you come across a school that's interested in this, again, get them to get in touch with me. Let's make some big changes here. And thank you from my heart for the way you've received me this afternoon. And apologies for that few moments you lost
No
me.
worries. And look, we have a request from Laura for a photo. So everybody has a 5-second warning to pose. Laura, do you know how to take the photo? Because I could learn how to do it, but I know there's a thing somewhere.
Yeah, I could do a screenshot. I can do
Yeah,
that.
There is also another actual like take a photo, but anyway, please do it.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Everybody
take it.
ready? Okay, one more. Got it. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you, Laura.
everyone.
Thank
Bye bye,
you.
everybody.